What is going on? This is Daniel here, and in this video I want to share the work I've been doing on my AI development stack. So what my goal was is I wanted to be able to work with AI as good as I can, really. Like, I wanted to have Tmux open with 8 terminals and just let things run and kind of just move quickly, but move in a way that still requires it still enables you to build good software. And I'm not going to say I have all the secrets. I don't. I'm trying to figure this out too. But I did learn a lot of things. And the first time I really tried this to move really, really fast using AI, it was a huge train wreck. And I wanted to just share those learnings with you. So let's get into it. Well, the first thing I want to mention is that when it comes to development with AI, unfortunately, because in software development, this was my favorite thing, the actual writing of the code. And with AI, if you do the development, if you do the code yourself, then you are the bottleneck. You're the one who's going to be slowing the process down. And for the goal here, it's really about trying to go as quick as possible while still building code that works and is functional and is tested. And in that scenario, you doing the development is a massive bottleneck. So most of my time now with this system is pretty much planning, because the AI is going to do whatever you tell him to do, but he's also going to just fill the gaps with all sorts of crazy wild ideas and misdirection and all sorts of different things if you don't plan enough. So most of this is planning, as well as a little bit of review, which I'll get to later in the video. So for the planning phase, the system that I'm using a lot, which I really recommend you look at, Matt Pocock. He has so many good videos. His YouTube's over here. I'm going to put a link in the description for it. But he has 3 skills that I use a lot. And the first one is called Grill Me. It's really simple. All it is a tiny file. Let me just move my fat head out of the way. Okay, so basically it just says, interview me relentlessly about every aspect of this plan. So if you have something that you need to do, hey, I need to build this feature in this app, then this skill is going to ask you a gazillion questions until the questions get pretty ridiculous. And that is going to allow you to flesh out and align yourself with the agent that you're talking to, so that the thing that you build is going to be the right thing. So that is the first phase for me. Afterwards, there's another skill that he has, which is called 2PRD. And what that's going to do is turn all the grilling questions that you have and answers, the alignment, into a product requirement document. And this document is going to say exactly what needs to be built and why. And it's going to basically put all of the alignment that you have with your AI into an official document. That is the first phase, and that is really what you need to nail before you start trying to build anything. And the final step of that is that you don't want the agent to build this huge feature all in one go. If you do that, there's going to be a mammoth load of code. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. It's harder to test. It's harder to get right. So what you should do is, after that, is use another skill that Matt has created called 2 issues. And what this is going to do is it's going to take the big feature that you want to create, and it's going to chop it into different slices or segments. Now, this part you need to be really careful of, because you want him to chop it in such a way that you can verify every single slice that he makes. So rather than starting off with one big module, designing the database structure, and then the next one would be to design the endpoints and the services, and then the third one would be to design the front end UI, for example. What you want to do is you want to try to make them vertical slices. So you want to kind of build almost like mini features, slice the big PRD into mini features that you can verify when one is done. So you can test it well, obviously, but you can also inspect it. You can see what's going on. Is this good? Is this not good? And if you do that, if you cut it into these mini feature slices, then that will give it a much higher chance of success. You can determine whether it works much easier than if you just build the whole thing in one go and then you had to deal with all the mistakes later. You have this process where you cut it into these vertical slices. So that is really important. Another thing that this does, this skill, that I'll leave a link in the description, as I said before. What it will do is it will also determine what dependencies there are. So if you have this slice, this would, the first slice might depend on, to do the second slice, you might need to do the first one first, but then you might be able to do the third one at the same time that you can do the second one, so they're non-blocking. It'll build you like a dependency graph of, what order you can actually build these features in, and that is also really valuable, especially if you want to start going quick and doing multiple things at the same time. So the next thing I do once I've sliced into issues and I've approved them is I'm using this tool called Beads, and this is made by Steve Yeager. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically Beads is over here, it's on GitHub, and it is a distributed graph issue tracker. So what does that mean? That means that when you slice your issues and you figure out how to build things and you've converted it into slices, Beads is going to create a kind of like a issue dependency graph of the issues that you need to create. You can do multiple features at the same time, and then you can slice them into issues. You could shove them into Beads, and your coding agent is going to figure out what depends on what and in what order you can actually do things. And this is super powerful because when you have Beads, and you have the dependency graph there set, what you can actually do is you can literally have a prompt that looks like this. This is how I prompt my coding agent. So all I do is I say to him, what's next? So I don't prompt him and say, hey, let's work on this. Or I don't actually have to figure out what we need to work on next. All I tell him is what's next. And he'll go look into Beads, and he will actually identify what is blocked, what is not blocked, what can we work on. It also sets the urgency of each issue. So if you have something that's P1, P2, P3, he's going to pick the ones that are P1 first, and he's going to select those and say, hey, we should work on this now. So it builds this dependency graph. So for example, from your issues, you might have issue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I forgot 6 here, but that's okay, 7. And he might say, okay, we've got issue 1 and issue 3. They can be done. They can both be done right now. Which one do you want me to pick up? And you might tell him, okay, let's start on issue 1. Then you can open up a new coding window. You can say to him what's next, or you could just tell him, hey, let's work on issue 3. And they can do them in parallel. And he's not going to start with issue 5. He's not going to start with issue 2 because he knows already that they're blocked and that he can't tackle them just yet. In Beads, once you tell your agent to work on an issue, what he does is he claims that issue. And then after that, no other agents are going to pick up that issue. Beads also commits everything kind of like you would commit in Git. So in GitHub, you're going to be committing the code. In Beads, you're committing the issues and the dependency graph. So all of your agents can be up to date and they can know exactly what issues are claimed, which ones are blocked, and they all have the exact same information, which means that you can run a lot of them in parallel and they'll all be up to date with where the project is, so they won't be stepping on each other's toes. So the way that an issue works is that, let's say I pick up an issue, let's say my agent picks up an issue. The first thing he will do is claim the issue in Beads and he'll commit it so all the other agents know that he's claimed that issue and that one's not available anymore. So if they pick up another one, they're not going to step on his toes and try to claim issue 1. After that, he creates a Git worktree. So this is like a copy of your repository, and he creates a branch where he can work on that issue so that other agents who are going to work on other issues, they're not editing the exact same code. They can work on separate issues at the same time. The next thing I do is I use another skill that Matt has made, which is called test-driven development. I highly recommend you do this because this forces the agents to write tests which will fail initially, and then they need to then write the code to pass the tests. That is really, really crucial. Once he's done with that, then what he can do is create a PR. and that's a pull request so that it can be merged into main. And what I typically do then is I create a new beads issue for the PR review. So I'll tell once the agent's done with his work, he creates a PR and that creates another issue, which means that this issue, the issue 1, cannot be closed until the PR has been reviewed. And then we approve the changes and then we merge. And then what happens is we close both this issue and we also close the original issue 1. So as soon as a PR is ready, then that becomes high priority because that's like a blocker that stops other issues from being opened up. So that is basically how it works right now. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but it is the way that I have started doing it and seems to work okay for now until I find a better process. But yeah, that is exactly how issues are tackled. And many issues can be tackled at the same time following this process. So another benefit of Beads is that Beads is structured data, which means that you can create a little UI, a little vibe-coded UI that can tell you exactly how things are going. So you can look at what's in flight, so what has been claimed but hasn't exactly closed yet. You can see what is ready, so what can agents pick up. You can also see what is blocked. You can also see what things you have in review as well. You can also look at the different epics. So when I say epic, I mean when we did a grilling session and then we created the PRD, that would then become an issue, which is also stored in Beads, and then the issues are created off of that, and that's how you get the epic. So you know exactly what you're working on, what are the certain things that you need to do, as well as a little dependency graph. I'm not too happy with the UI of this one, so I'm going to improve that over time, but basically it just tells me like what is blocked, what depends on what, you know, how the process is going. This is a screenshot, so like generally I can zoom down and see the whole thing, but nonetheless, it's very easy to create a UI so you can see what's going on with your project and see exactly how things are coming along. So one thing that is a really sensitive topic is code review, and how much of the code should you review when it comes to AI development. If you review everything line by line, then you're going to be very sure of what gets pushed, but you're going to move extremely slowly because the AI is going to write a lot of code, like a ton of code. And if you're sitting there reviewing everything, regardless of what it is, then you know you might as well not use AI. You might as well just use like an autocomplete because it's going to take you even longer than it would if you just wrote it yourself. On the other hand, if you review nothing, then you're going to have a ton of speed and you're going to build things really fast, but there's going to be huge infrastructure problems. The architecture is not going to be the way you want. There could be critical bugs that you've missed. So there's definitely a balancing act that needs to happen here. So there's a couple things that can help you with this. And the first one I would say is that you can do a code review with a fresh agent in a fresh context window. You don't want to use the same agent that wrote the code to review the code because he's going to be extremely biased based on the thing that he wrote. So the first thing you should do is have a fresh context window and do a code review with the agent to identify what the bugs are. But another thing that I saw, which I have been meaning to implement, is something called no mistakes. And what this will do is also grade it on how urgent the PR is. So it will give it like a severity, whether it's low, medium, or high. And if it's low, you can basically just auto fix and merge it, and you don't really need to worry too much about it. If it's high, those are the situations where you should start looking at the diff of the PR and then determining, whether you need to fix things yourself. And this will definitely help you do that. So I have a system that I have been using, a skill that I've been using that kind of does this, but to be honest with you, I'm not that happy with it in the way that it grades it. So I've been thinking about using this one to try to help speed up the process and also give me a better grading for the PRs. But nonetheless, you can use these tools to help you focus your attention on the things that need review versus trying to review everything. And that can help you get more speed, but also still be, relatively certain that you're not going to be introducing any nasty bugs. So the second thing is really kind of boiling down to the start. So when you're here, when you're creating the issues, you want to create slices that are as small as possible. right? I mean, it doesn't have to be so granular that it, will slow you down to a creeping halt. But if you create an issue that is absolutely massive, then it means that review time, it's most likely going to be a very high, severe issue. There's going to be a lot of code, and it's going to be very, very hard to review if you need to get your hands dirty and start looking at it. So the smaller the PRs are, the more likely the agent is going to be able to auto fix it, because he's just focusing on a specific thing rather than, having this huge, huge feature that he needs to implement. It's going to be very small and focused, and that's going to enable you to have him auto fix a lot of different things when it's a small issue. So the best advice I can give is to make the issues very small. Use AI coding review to help you identify how severe the issue is. If it is quite severe and it's a high risk thing, then you can go and review it yourself. If it's low issue or it's a low concern, then you can auto fix and merge it in. And that's how you can get speed while also being relatively certain that the code is going to not have too many severe bugs in it. All right, let's talk about problems, because I had some problems when I ran this, and I don't want you to have the same problems when you're doing it. The first thing is that this method, this process where you're doing the grilling session and then you're creating the PRD and then you're doing the issues, I think it's really good for existing projects. If you have a project that you're working on and you need to build a new feature, it works really well. If you're building something from scratch, then I find that the grilling session is not generally sufficient. I find that he doesn't ask all the questions. He doesn't get deep enough into the architecture, so that what happens is there's a lot of gaps that end up appearing. At least for me, I had a lot of gaps. And then the agent started building a lot of different things, like working on the issues, but there were a lot of holes that I realized after the project was really underway and a lot of things got built. So what I would recommend, and this is something that I have started doing, is I have started, firstly, when I want to build something from scratch, I'll build a prototype first. I'll just vibe code up a prototype and just, with dummy data, figure out how it works. Okay, this is how I want it. Because when you build a prototype, you don't care about the architecture, the infrastructure, but what AI is really good at is just, building these UIs, getting it in front of you, letting you see it, let you hold it. And then when you have that, because you have this visual perception of what you're building, it's a lot easier to then build a really comprehensive product requirement document. And for that, I've been using something called the BMAD method. So the BMAD method is a agentic framework for development, which I also recommend is really, really good. The thing I like the most is the planning documents from it. So the PRD skill that they have here, the PRD agent is really able to create amazing product requirement documents. There's also an architecture agent, which enables you to really define the architecture so that when you're actually building out a new product, prototype and using the BMAD method to do the product requirement document, do the architecture, will give you a huge, massive head start. He'll also, if you write it correctly, he's going to break the product into different features. And then what you can do is, if you want to get into even more nitty-gritty detail for every single one of those features, I can go up to here, and then I can do a grilling session on those features to nail them down even further. And that is the process that I am using from now on, is build a prototype, just vibe code a prototype up, make it look the way you want it to, then use BMAD to really kind of build the documents and the specs, and then go through this process. Another issue that I ran into when I was using this system and trying to parallelize a lot of different agents is that they will start introducing terminology into the product and the build and the scope and everything that you're not going to be 100% sure about, right? Like, they'll start naming things in certain ways, and because of that, the more that this happens, the more that you accept it, instead of actually pushing back and saying, I don't understand what you mean. Let's clarify that. What are you talking about? Can you explain yourself? Like, you need to be pushing back on these systems, because they will start creating terminology. And then if you just accept that, if you just accept what they've said without actually pushing back, testing it, making sure that you understand as good as they do, if not better, then they're going to just start building all sorts of different things. And then you're going to look at the code later and you're going to be like, hang on a minute, that's not what I wanted you to build. And this happened to me. And it was painful because I had to start it again after working on this project for a long time. Now, I found out that this issue is called cognitive surrender, and this exactly describes what happened to me, which is when these agents are introducing a lot of terminology and they're giving you suggestions. If you start not pushing back, then you're basically you're submitting cognitively. You're saying to yourself, okay, I don't understand. I'm just going to trust them. And then they will start building just all sorts of crazy stuff. It's not going to be to your plan. It's not going to be what you want. And you're going to start losing track of things. It's going to become harder for you to actually review anything. You're going to start just accepting PRs, even though you shouldn't. And you should actually review some of them, especially when they're critical. And you're going to start losing track of your code base and understanding what's going on. And this is a big problem that you need to keep track of. The way that I've thought about it is really that you need to stay on top of everything they're saying. If things don't make sense, you can't just accept it. You need to start really pushing back, questioning, saying, hang on, what are you talking about here? Can you please clarify, etc. You need to really push these agents so that they don't just start running off in one direction that is completely different to the direction that you want. So keep on top of that and make sure that you are still in the driving seat when you're trying to build these systems. That is it for this video. I hope that has been useful for you. If you're building your own AI system and it looks completely different to mine, I'm very keen to hear about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.